In today's session, we will be discussing the 7 steps on solving a case study. Now, solving a case study is very similar as to how you solve a real life problem. Now, each situation of our life is unique, and that is why it requires a unique treatment. In a very similar fashion, there is no definitive or particular approach to solve a case that you can repeat over and over. This is because there can be many interpretation of a case, and hence there are varied solutions. However, there are some basic steps that can be followed while approaching a case study. These 7 steps have been discussed in the following content. So, solving a case study is a 7 step process. You read the question multiple times, then provide a suitable introduction, then you identify the ethical or the moral dilemma at hand. Afterwards, you identify the stakeholders involved. When you've done that, you cite the relevant laws, values, and the approaches that can be implemented and devise possible choices that you can take. Finally, you decide the course of action that is best suited, and then you conclude the case study by giving a way forward. To have a better understanding, let's look at each of these steps in a spotlight. So, coming to the first step in solving a case study is always to read your case multiple times. There are 3 main reasons for you to do so. Firstly, by reading the case again and again, you understand the problem really well. You can identify some of the things that you might have skipped in your first glance or your first reading. Secondly, most of the time, the questions is your only source of data. Now, there can be some case studies which are derived from real life problems, so you might Google them to get a better insight, but normally the question is your only source. So, to identify all of those nitty-gritty details, you need to read it thoroughly. Lastly, by doing so, you can identify a great deal of things that are crucial to solving a case study effectively. These can be like why or how did the issue arise, or like what was the central or the core problem at play, and lastly, what were the actions and the reaction or the causes and effects of the problems identified. Now, coming to the second step, as you have given the case a thorough reading, you have identified the problems, you have identified the causes, you have identified the effects. Now we're actually delving into the solving part or the solution. And for what you need to do is basically, first of all, provide a suitable introduction. Now, this introduction is you constructing the issue in your own words. If applicable, you can provide a real world incident on which the case study is revolving to set up a precedence. Now that the introduction has been formulated, we come to the most crucial part, and that is the identification. Step number 3 is the identification of the ethical or the moral dilemma at hand. Now, when you're trying to identify the ethical or the moral dilemma, you would primarily see one of the following reasons. Number 1, a dilemma may arise in a situation where the personal ethics is at contrast to the professional one, or vice versa. For example, there is an honest, hardworking senior official who is engaged in domestic violence. Number 2, it can be about the nature of interest. Maybe there is a situation where the minority is getting affected and the majority is gaining the benefit out of it. For example, mass construction being done at the cost of the environment. Number 3, a situation that is legally right but ethically wrong, or something that is ethically right but legally wrong. One such example can be a pharma company increasing the cost of life-saving drug for profit making. Now, here it is absolutely legally right for them to do so, but the ethics of this situation would lie somewhere in the grey region. And here again, in this situation, lies a dilemma. Or consider a case where an aged, destitute senior citizen is being denied social security benefits just due to the lack of adequate documentation. This right here is reason number 4 for a dilemma in which at one side is the rule of law while on the other side is the exercising of discretion. Similarly, dilemmas might arise in duty versus conscience or public versus private interest situations, or simply where there is a conflict of interest at play. And we're really unsure as to which is the right path. Now that we have identified the ethical or the moral dilemma at hand, we need to account for the stakeholders. Stakeholders are the people who are being directly or indirectly affected by the current situation. So, step number 4 would be to identify all of them. Common examples include employees, public in general, or a particular segment of population. So, we need to identify all of them. Why are we doing that? The reason is that we're identifying the nature of dilemma, the stakeholders involved, and it is simply so that we could find the relevant or applicable laws or values that can be used to define or devise a genuine course of action that we can take. So step number 5 would be to devise course of actions that we can take by correlating the applicable laws and policies or human values and duties. These laws or values would be different from case to case, but these provide the basis or the foundation on which your whole case study is going to stand. They form the base of your debate, your justification, and as a result, these laws or the values that you're citing would lead to the generation of different courses that you might take. The examples of different laws or policies or the values and duties are given as such. For example, in a case study pertaining to the dowry dilemma, you can quote the 1961 Dowry Prohibition Act to build an argument against it. Or if a case involves child marriage, you can cite the respective law. You get the idea. Now that you've brainstormed everything, here comes the main body or the written body of the case study. A separate PDF can be found in the description with the detailed course worksheet describing the questions that you can answer. These questions are primarily of two types. The first ones are about the courses of action, the responses that you're going to take by building an argument following all the previous steps pertaining to the specific situation at hand. While the other type can be about the alternatives you could give, the merits or demerits of each alternative that you're going to give, followed by your final suggestion. One easy way to deal with the first type is to talk about the issue at hand. You investigate the issue, you report it, and then by the nature of the case study, you could go for like a behavioral change which might have a long-term scope, or you might have to opt for a more personal action to correct or realign your personal biases or morals. To deal with the other alternative or the merits and demerits or the final suggestion, again by the help of the previous 5 steps, you build an argument and then you choose an ethical approach most viable to the question at hand. It might be utilitarian or consequentialism or justice theory or virtue theory depending on the nature of question. However, care should be taken that you need to use the applicable laws or values of step 5 along with the ethical theory approach to devise the best course of action. Now, you need to explore and keep in mind both the dimension and level of the case study while answering all of these. The dimension may either be ethical or social or legal or economical or even political in nature. It's about the nature of the dilemma. The levels tell us about the nature of the case or the impact it's going to have or the decision that you have to take and its impact. Now the level can either be of the national level or the organization or at an organizational level or even personal or at an individual level. So both of these need to be explored while you're answering or you're making that body of the case study. So make sure you effectively understand the dimension and the level and you implicate it in your given solution. Finally, the last step is all about concluding what you have described in your case study. You need to state the final course of action chosen and briefly explain the reason for opting that particular option. Now, after that you've done that and you're done with your solution, there are some things that you really need to make sure. So step number 7 is all about making sure, number 1, that the solution provided by you deals with the central or the core problem in totality. Or number 2, your solution is consistent with the principle of the organization or the code of conduct rules. Number 3, you need to be realistic. Your solution should be practically implementable and within the acceptable risk parameters. Number 4, your solution is within the authority limits of the decision maker, in accordance with his position and responsibilities. So if you are a therapist per se, your solution shouldn't make you a detective or a private investigator. Number 5, your solution shouldn't suggest any undesirable alternatives. And lastly, if there are any peripheral problems at hand, you should have addressed them. These peripheral problems are those that are not directly there but may be indirectly caused, or they might be identified while addressing your solution or presenting a solution. So you need to address all of them. So that's it. These are the 7 steps that you need to adhere to while solving a case study. Follow them and hopefully you yourselves will be amazed by your performance and what you have achieved. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more informative videos.